So there's a common criticism I get on my videos. I wouldn't say it's a lot of people, but it's frequent enough. Usually there's a few people mentioning it in the comments of any video, and it's that I state my opinion as if it were objective fact. I would say that I try my best to include as many objective facts as possible, but sure, some of what I say is my opinion, my perspective. And I just wasn't aware that people watching videos on YouTube about video games didn't realize that people use this platform to voice their opinions. If someone makes a video saying that barbecue sauce is the best condiment, there's surely going to be someone in the comments angry about it. Yes, I say things strongly. I have strong opinions and beliefs, and certain game design values that I want to fight for. But the last thing I want is for people to think that there's no room for their differing opinions and discussion and all that. So I've decided to re-edit my Resident Evil Village review. You can check out the original version right here. If you haven't seen it yet, please watch that one first. I'm still proud of that video. I'd suggest watching that one over this one if you haven't already. But you guys let me know in the comments if you like this new format. I'd be happy to go forward with new videos like this. And maybe I could even re-edit all of my other controversial videos. Okay, enough rambling, on with the new version of the review. Well, they did it. They made a Resident Evil game that, in my opinion, for the majority of the experience, is devoid of nearly everything that made the series interesting, and despite the horror setting and serious tone, in my opinion, Village is not a survival horror game. Let me start this video by saying I have no problem with anyone who likes this game or praises it. I'm not calling anyone a fake Resident Evil fan just for saying Village is good. If you bought this game and you had a good time, that's great. I want people to enjoy the games they buy. However, I would also like to enjoy the games I buy. The Resident Evil series has had its ups and downs. It's existed in different forms. From the, in my opinion, glory days of the classic exploration-focused originals and the, in my opinion, fantastic GameCube remake, to the well-received over-the-shoulder horror shooter of RE4, to whatever the hell this is, to the modern remakes, one being, in my opinion, pretty good and the other being a, in my opinion, soulless cash grab, to the, in my opinion, impressive yet flawed RE7, which, in my opinion, recaptured a lot of the original's magic, but, in my opinion, wore out its welcome halfway through and ended up, in my opinion, killing its replayability with unskippable cutscenes and intros. Village has been hyped up all year. Lady Dimitrescu was a huge meme. Capcom did several reveal events. The critical reception has been positive, and after seeing the potential in RE7 and the mega success of the RE2 remake, I went into Village with low to moderate expectations. I didn't need to be blown away, I just wanted to have a good Resident Evil time. And sadly, I didn't get that. It's been about 3 years since I played a game that left me sitting there jaw dropped open in total bewilderment and incredulity. I'm fucking shocked. I had no idea it could be, in my opinion, this bad. It's not all bad. As a modern AAA video gaming experience, it is, in my opinion, average. Not quite decent, but passable. A mediocre gameplay experience dressed up in fancy graphics. Beautiful graphics that dazzle and impress, and great engine optimization. This game runs smooth as butter, hitting consistent high frame rates at 1440p resolution. Except when the witches get close to you with their bugs, then the game freaks out. Village follows Ethan Winters from RE7 as he's looking for his baby Rose, who's been taken to a creepy village full of monsters, and this group of 4 creatures that serve their leader, Mother Miranda, who wants the baby for something. In similar fashion to RE7, we have a, in my opinion, long intro. Thankfully, this time around we can skip the cutscenes. You still have to do the walking bits, but, in my opinion, they aren't that bad. I appreciate a slow setup to a horror game, it's fine. In my opinion, it just goes too far. Once you're whisked away to the village and find yourself in a car accident, there's a long walk through the woods. Fine for your first playthrough, it sets the mood, in my opinion, but it sucks on repeat playthroughs, and I bet the speedrunners were grinding their teeth in rage when they saw this. I can't imagine the frustration of screwing up your run and having to reset every time to walk through the woods again. Guys, just have the categories start from the first typewriter save. Don't torture yourselves, please. God, you know what? I hate this field of view. It's giving me a headache. I can't see anything. Hold on a second. Nexus mods, lazy FOV fix. There we go. In my opinion, that's so much better. I don't mind the tight FOV in Resident Evil 7 since the maps and combat are generally claustrophobic, but in a game like this where areas are open and enemies can surround you, in my opinion, there's no excuse not to have a wider FOV option. I recommend anyone on PC get this mod. There may be some visual anomalies like seeing the light source of your flashlight in the dark sections, but in my opinion, it's a small price to pay for the entire game feeling better to play. Entering the creepy village, getting through a bunch of cutscenes and scripted events, we finally get a weapon and take on our first enemy. Not zombies, not black tar monsters, this time they're werewolves, lichens, and I think they're cool. They're aggressive, agile, and deadly. Unfortunately, they are one of only 4 enemy types in the entire game. We'll go on to meet zombie dudes, birds, and drill guys, and there may be some variations like lichens holding weapons or zombie guys with headgear, but really, in my opinion, Village carries the same problem as RE7, a lack of interesting enemies being introduced as the game progresses. In my opinion, we need dogs and some kind of freaky mutant added to the mix. When enemies die, you'll notice that they drop items, usually treasure, so they brought back the RE4 style of gameplay where combat is incentivized. One of the reasons I wouldn't call this a survival horror game. In my opinion, it's not survival horror when the game gives you treats for killing everything. The opening combat sections introduce a barricade mechanic that goes on to almost never be used beyond these sections. And as you're introduced to the combat, your character Ethan states repeatedly that the lichens just keep coming, clearly communicating that these waves of enemies aren't going to stop. And what does that tell you that you need to do? Find an escape route, or find some important item, or a switch or lever, anything other than empty all your bullets into endless waves of enemies. Then they put you into a timed long survival section that, in my opinion, contradicts what the game has been telling you. Now you are supposed to just shoot enemies and run away until the fight ends or the cutscene. It's confusing, and there have been players running around this area wondering what the hell they're supposed to do or where to go. These opening sections with barricades and a survival timer, in my opinion, are misleading and show the game for what it is not going to be as it goes on, which, in my opinion, is an awful way to start. I say that because these frantic moments of combat all but disappear from the game for hours after this. You're led to the big open area of the village, and if you're a Resident Evil fan, you may find yourself thinking, nice, I get to explore this village. And in my opinion, you can't be blamed for thinking that. The original games had exploration sewn deep into their design, especially in the starting areas. Large maps containing different paths and rooms to explore, puzzle items that had to be found and put together, keys that opened several corresponding doors, some required, some optional. Important items could be found in different orders depending on your exploration path. You may find puzzle items that you don't understand until much later, you just know they're important. In my opinion, that's a key part of the Resident Evil experience, one that they, in my opinion, successfully brought back in RE7 with the exploration of the Baker estate, and, in my opinion, faithfully recreated in the RE2 remake. So don't tell me this is just some outdated 90s game design that no one wants, when they, in my opinion, were able to implement it excellently into 2 modern Resident Evil titles. Those 2 games gave me hope that the people making Village would understand how to make a Resident Evil game, even if they were putting a new twist on it, which RE games usually do. But this, in my opinion, this is where the real disappointment begins, and we start to see, in my opinion, the gaping hole in the body of Resident Evil after having its heart ripped out. Village is, in my opinion, for the most part, if not entirely, a linear experience. That's not to suggest that other Resident Evil games didn't have a set linear progression of maps. They did. Mansion to the guardhouse to the underground to the laboratory. But the way you solved each area was, in my opinion, frequently not linear, because you were checking lots of directions and rooms to figure out where to go and what to do. Village, in my opinion, strips it all away and points you in the one direction you need to go, with the one key that goes to the one locked door. This linearity is a big part of RE4 and RE5 as well, but in my opinion, those games make up for it in ways that Village, in my opinion, simply does not, and we'll get to that once we start talking about other topics. You may look at this big open area with all the different paths and doors and think the game is opening up, but the church gate is open and there's literally nowhere else to go. Through the church door, through the field, and through the next series of cutscenes and walking sections. The game's, in my opinion, still hasn't started. It's been a long series of walking to the next cutscene, and if you're watching all these cutscenes, as I was, it's gonna be a solid hour before you unlock the castle entrance. So we open the castle entrance. Nice, now the game is really going to start. And another cutscene interrupts us, which takes us away from our progress and puts us into a scripted running sequence of just holding up and pressing the interact button on objects. In my opinion, it's not real gameplay, all to lead us right back where we were anyway. Moving on, we meet the merchant, who just like in RE4 is here to offer new weapons, upgrades, and buy treasure from us that we've been collecting along the way. And we're finally entering the castle, and it's, in my opinion, the worst map in the entire Resident Evil series. I am not exaggerating, and right now I'm gonna talk at length, extensively about how, in my opinion, bad this part of the game is, so get ready. After an hour and a half of no exploration and dozens of cutscenes, now the game is gonna start. That's what you think, walking into this big map, moving through the first hallway and into the large open area of the castle. A rush of joy hits you as you look around at all the different paths, and a second floor to explore. Nice, I'm gonna be able to look around and try to figure out this castle and its puzzles and take this at my own pace. No, another cutscene. The witches immediately interrupt your exploration and drag you into a back room where you are presented to Lady Dimitrescu. Upon escaping, you're led down a corridor and given the eyeball puzzle piece. Remember this, it was given to you. There was literally nowhere else to go. You didn't actually find it yourself. This will come into play later. You find yourself back in the open hall and you're presented with the main puzzle of the castle. 4 statues needing 4 heads. Hey, that's like classic Resident Evil 1, with the 4 masks you gotta find around the mansion, or the 4 medallions needed to unlock the back door. So we're gonna be able to explore this castle and find 4 statue heads. Awesome, the game is starting. You may have noticed at this point, in my opinion, a real lack of music, which is a trend in modern Resident Evil games. 7, the RE2 remake, now this. It's like they think just because it's a horror game, there can't be music, when the originals had, in my opinion, gorgeous soundtracks and musical themes to different rooms, which, in my opinion, never took away from the horror feel. It, in my opinion, added so much. And then sometimes all music would be absent, creating a very, in my opinion, eerie feeling that could be capitalized on by a good scare. Now the eerie feeling of no music is in the whole game, so in my opinion, there's nothing special about it. In my opinion, it loses all meaning and you get numb to it. Let's explore, shall we? Well, this door goes back to the room we escaped from, and that one just goes back to the castle entrance. So let's check the other big open area over here. Door's locked. This door unlocks, but also just takes us back to the castle entrance. Upstairs, maybe? Let's go left. Door's locked from the other side. Okay. The wine room? There's a holding thing here where you could put a wine bottle, which we don't have. So I guess we'll go to the last door of this level, which is opened with the eyeball we were given earlier. This is what I mean when I say, in my opinion, the game is entirely linear. The castle itself, in my opinion, is a big illusion of fake exploration. There is only one path to take, and as soon as we open this door, a witch shows up to push us forward on this path, which contains a locked door and only one door we can go through, which takes us to the one escape path in the wall, taking us down into the dungeon area, leading us through room after room of only one way to go. Running around picking up all kinds of items that go into your inventory, which, in my opinion, is massive, by the way. If you aren't running out of ammo, you might think that your inventory space is getting tight, and in my opinion, you'd be wrong. The trademark inventory management of the classics, of RE7, of the remakes, even of RE4 and 5, in my opinion, is gone in favor of a, in my opinion, ridiculously forgiving inventory that holds just about everything you could ever need. Even in Resident Evil 4, with its big starting inventory, there were so many items, many of them being large, that you still, in my opinion, regularly had to make decisions about what you were going to pick up and what to discard. And that's a big part of the overall problem in Village. Decision making. In my opinion, there isn't much of it. Crafting materials don't take up any space at all. That means green herbs, chem fluid, metal scrap, and gunpowder don't occupy your inventory and can always be picked up. They seem to stack infinitely in a separate crafting menu. If these items took up inventory space, it would, in my opinion, greatly add to the concept of inventory management, at least until it gets so out of control that it doesn't matter. Once you start to kind of feel cramped in your inventory, you can buy an upgrade that gives you even more space. And shockingly, in my first playthrough, I only had 2 instances of not having enough space in my inventory to pick up something I wanted. And on my second playthrough, I didn't run out of space once, even though I picked up every item I found and explored many optional areas of the maps for even more items. Why even have limited inventory space at this point? Just give me endlessly deep pockets and forget about it. If you're gonna treat me like someone who can't manage inventory space, just leave it out. You'll be able to afford these inventory upgrades and weapon upgrades and ammo and health, whatever you want, because of all the treasure you find with even a minimal amount of exploration. Because the exploration of this game, in my opinion, is relegated to optional treasure hunting, not actually woven into the design of level progression. And let me say that, in my opinion, it's great that exploration is rewarded with ammo and treasure and stuff, but exploration, in my opinion, should also be part of the progression of the game, because without it, in my opinion, you're just going in a straight line to the next scripted event. So we're just moving forward on the set path. We're confronted by the witch lady and we escape her by just following the linear path. We run upstairs and we gotta shoot her until she freezes or something because of the sunlight, and the next room contains the wine bottle. This is the second puzzle item that has been, in my opinion, handed to us at the end of a linear path. In my opinion, there is no satisfaction of discovery. It was just given to us. Remember in the RE2 remake when you found the valve handle that was in the office? It was in this small part of the larger office. Well, the first time I played it, I didn't check that part for some reason, and I ended up leaving without the valve handle, which led to me wandering around lost for a bit, till I decided to retrace my steps, think about what I hadn't checked, and opened my map to see what rooms still had something left to find. The game allowed me to make a mistake and then use my head and the game's tools to correct myself, and that, in my opinion, simply doesn't happen in Village. The wine bottle is taken to the wine room, obviously. The wine holder reveals the courtyard key, there's only one door locked with a key, and there's literally nowhere else to go, so we go to that one door. Hey, a big open courtyard area. Maybe there's different directions we can take from here. Nope, only one door is open. Head upstairs and into a hallway where, again, there is only one door you can open, which presents a puzzle. And whereas in my opinion, real Resident Evil game, you may come across a puzzle and choose to solve it now, or come back later as you explore other areas, since this game is, in my opinion, entirely linear, there's no choice but to solve it. Here's the puzzle, solve it now, or do nothing. The puzzle room takes us down into these catacombs where there's some, in my opinion, decent claustrophobic combat that doesn't, in my opinion, feel so easy to simply ignore. So let's talk a little about the combat before we move on with the castle. In my opinion, there's really two kinds of combat designs in Resident Evil games. Careful, measured combat weighing your resources and your exploration options, and confrontational combat obstacles that are hard to avoid so you end up engaging in them because you almost feel forced to. In my opinion, both of them work. RE4's mostly linear level design is, in my opinion, complemented by the large combat encounters, lots of enemies often in tight spaces. In my opinion, it's a great way to disguise the linearity of your game. In my opinion, it's not such a big deal that you're not making exploration decisions if you're frequently making frantic combat decisions and there's a freaking one-hit kill chainsaw guy coming at you. In a classic Resident Evil game, like the originals or the classic-inspired design of RE7 or the RE2 remake, since your ammo and health items are so limited, and your inventory space is so tight that you can't have an abundance of supplies on you, you pick and choose your battles carefully, or out of pure necessity. Avoiding combat in a survival horror game, in my opinion, is a key element of the genre, and because of the exploration-based map design and backtracking through puzzle solving, several connecting areas will be passed through multiple times. You could end up using this hallway 10 times as you're moving around. So you're faced with a, in my opinion, big decision. Do I save 20 bullets and just try to move around these zombies? Or do I kill them now so this room isn't so dangerous later on, at the risk of moving forward with almost no bullets left? If I screw up in trying to avoid them and I get bit every time I go through this hallway and I end up using 3 first aid sprays healing myself, maybe that wasn't worth saving the 20 bullets. In my opinion, that's the pressure that a real survival horror experience puts on you. In my opinion, you have to have one of the two, or a combination. RE2 Remake, in my opinion, did this beautifully with the Lickers. They were, in my opinion, incredibly aggressive and agile, but they were blind, so if you quietly sneaked around them, you could avoid fighting them and save shotgun shells. That's risky in itself, because you're gonna pass through these hallways several times. And if Mr. X is coming after you, and you have to run, and there are Lickers in here, you've got a problem. Or maybe you're forced to defend yourself against a pack of zombies you didn't expect, and you alert the Lickers you forgot were there, and now everything's fucked. Creative, memorable, strategic combat decisions. That's, in my opinion, what a Resident Evil game needs. Village, for the most part, in my opinion, only sporadically throws a handful of enemies at you that are pretty easy to avoid, whether you're luring them around geometry and running away, or shooting them once with a shotgun and running away. So, in my opinion, we don't have the high-pressure combat of RE4 to disguise the linearity, and we are able to avoid enemies without the risk of running into them again through backtracking puzzle solving, because that doesn't exist in this game. So they've combined the combat encounters of OG Resident Evil and action-based RE4 and RE5, but, in my opinion, completely missed the point with both of them. The inventory is just packed with multiple firearms and explosives, healing items, ammo. It's like they want you to be an unstoppable killing machine, but, in my opinion, the game doesn't throw enough enemies at you to justify it. And since your inventory is so large, you'll have plenty of ammo, especially since, in my opinion, the crafting system has been busted as well. In my opinion, it's been completely dumbed down from RE7. Early in RE7, you're introduced to bullet and health crafting using the chem fluid, green herbs, and gunpowder. Chem fluid plus gunpowder makes bullets, chem fluid plus green herb makes health. In RE7, you're making the critical decision of, do I use this chem fluid to make a few more handgun bullets, or do I stock up on health? Again, asking the player to make important decisions that impact their survival. Village, in my opinion, removes the entire thought process by adding metal scrap, which combines with gunpowder to make bullets, and then chem fluid goes with the green herb to make health. So with these materials having no crossover, in my opinion, there's no decision to be made anymore. The first maps of the game, in my opinion, demand no consideration from the player about what you're going to craft. Crafting decisions are, in my opinion, further trivialized by the store. Eventually you get crafting recipes for shells and sniper rounds, and those do require chem fluid, but you can buy these ammo types at the store and find plenty in the world. And like I said, so much of the combat, in my opinion, isn't even necessary, so you don't end up making tough decisions on making advanced ammo types over making health. Lockpicks are also, in my opinion, trivialized by having too much ammo and health in your inventory. In RE7, you'd find a lockpick and wonder which of the 4 locked boxes should be opened. And because of your limited inventory space, keeping a lockpick on you could mean that you don't have room for something else you really need. RE1 had this going for Chris as well, who needed to find small keys to open optional drawers and rooms. A small key took up an inventory slot, so you had to plan carefully as you explored. Now, in Village, just keep lockpicks on you all the time, unlock every drawer you come across, and in my opinion, who cares what's inside, you already have so much. This is why it's so frustrating to hear people say that Village takes from the best elements of the Resident Evil series, and it's like RE4 and RE7 mixed together, when really, in my opinion, it only draws from those games in the most superficial way possible. Okay, it has RE7's first-person perspective and crafting, and it has RE4's store and treasure hunting, but in my opinion, the foundation of their gameplay is missing. In my opinion, it's been replaced with an on-the-rails linear experience with no decision-making that, in my opinion, can't even entertain us with steady action like RE4 could. That's why this Catacombs area, in my opinion, feels alright. If the game is going to be linear, in my opinion, you need to throw more combat obstacles in front of the player, and they do that here. Your movement options are limited, it's easy to get cornered. In my opinion, it's good stuff. We take an elevator up, walk along a set path outside, and get confronted by Lady Dimitrescu in a section where we just have to open the exit door and run away, into a room that gives us the first head for the statue puzzle from the main hall of the castle. Again, we did not find this ourselves. It was given to us at the end of a linear section that we had no choice but to follow. Are you seeing a pattern here? Well, get used to it. In my opinion, the entire game is like this. Moving forward, we have a music puzzle, which, in my opinion, might be the most embarrassing thing I've ever seen. If you can read music, you'll solve this immediately. If you can't, all you have to do is count the spaces between the notes and play them accordingly. Find the first note, count 3 down, so you go 3 keys to the left and press that note. Count up 2 spaces, so you go 2 keys right, and so on. Hooray, you did it, you can count. They also made it even easier by not including the black keys on the piano. They made a melody that can be played only on the white keys, because we wouldn't want to confuse people with a B flat or something crazy like that. But wait, in my opinion, it gets worse. There's no penalty for pressing the wrong note, or playing notes out of order, which means you can literally just press every key up and down the piano until the puzzle auto-completes itself. Are you with me now? Are you seeing how this game, in my opinion, was made for people who don't want to play a Resident Evil game? Abel, what are you doing?
I am solving a puzzle.
What do you mean you're solving a puzzle?
Ron told me that if I play this melody, he will get me a soda.
Get you a soda? Okay, but if you're gonna play the melody, you have to actually play the notes in order.
The notes,
in my opinion,
are in there.
I don't think that's gonna work.
Here you go, man.
No,
In my opinion,
you can't actually accept that.
How dare you speak to me?
Abel? What's wrong, man? You okay?
I don't like Dr. Pepper.
Well, I like Dr. Pepper.
In my opinion,
No one cares what you like.
Yeah, I know.
the iron key takes us to the staircase where Big Lady confronts us again, and wouldn't you know, there's a convenient circle right outside that you can lure her around, so you can continue following the set path that takes you to the next witch fight, which is definitely the worst. All you do is pull the lever over and over to freeze her and then shoot her. There's so much open space that you'll never get hit. In my opinion, a far cry from the RE3 Nemesis fight where you actually have to get Nemesis close to the toxic waste pipes and hit the valve with the right timing so he gets hit. You know, in my opinion, something that requires effort. She dies and we get a statue head for our troubles. The next room is a puzzle room, which, in my opinion, lies to you about the solution. Let the 5 bells of this chamber ring out. The 5 bells of this chamber, in this room. 1, 2, 3, 4, and bell number 5 is outside after breaking the window. In my opinion, someone needs to be fired. We find a hunting rifle, plenty of space for this thing, and we haven't even upgraded our inventory yet. Run around outside on a set path as birds attack from above. Here, have another statue head. The elevator takes us back to the main hall, and we head upstairs with our key to the locked door because, say it with me now, there's literally nowhere else to go. And here's the last head, at the end of this big castle level that has been, in my opinion, nothing but linear paths and scripted events, devoid of any player agency. This final mask is, in my opinion, the perfect example of how not to make a Resident Evil game. You pick up the mask and the door locks behind you. You can't get out. If you put the head back on, the door opens and you're free. There's also a crawl space to go to another area. Follow the crawl space, fight the last witch, and grab the animal skull off the wall. Examine the piece, take the skull off the mount, place it on the statue to unlock the door, and leave with the mask. In my opinion, if this were a real Resident Evil game, you would have found this animal skull somewhere else first. And you would think, I wonder what this is for. And you'd either store it somewhere or keep it on you, eventually finding this mask puzzle and solving it with your mind. You'd realize, oh, right, that animal skull from like an hour ago. Maybe I can put that in its place. And then you'd backtrack through the castle, passing through dangerous combat encounters that you may have avoided to save ammo, risking your life, going there and back to solve the puzzle. Or you find this puzzle first and it traps you inside and you can't figure out how to escape with the mask, so you leave it to come back later. And when you find the skull somewhere else, you put it together in your head that you could take this back to that mask puzzle and maybe you'll be able to escape. One of those two, in my opinion, would be an appropriate way to handle this. But just saying, hey, this is a puzzle, you need a puzzle piece, okay, here's the piece, in my opinion, is not the way to do it. The puzzle is solved, Big Lady comes after you, you run in a circle, open the door, and her AI glitches out and she stands there staring at you forever. Unbelievable. Eventually, we get to the boss fight, shooting Lady Dimitrescu as she rides around on a dragon. Just walk backwards and shoot her. She won't ever hit you if you just keep walking back. She dies, and the village meme character is now gone, likely to the disappointment of many. And we're done with the castle. In my opinion, a sick perversion of what a Resident Evil map should be. In my opinion, a big fat lie. Let us never discuss it again. Leaving the castle, we return to the village and try to find our way to the next objective. And here's where it maybe feels like we're getting some free exploration, but again, in my opinion, it's all an illusion. You gotta get to the house with the red chimney, and the map is laid out in a way for you to have to take one specific path from A to B, winding you through a bunch of areas where you can break off the path and look for treasure and supplies, but it's really just a straight line. And they say, hey, you can check out these spaces if you want, but you won't find anything necessary to progress. Just go forward if you want. The more I play this game, and I have completed it 3 times so far, the more it reminds me of God of War 2018. I remember thinking how, in my opinion, So much of the world all looks the same, with just grass and rocks everywhere. And we have the same thing here, with the large majority of the game being out in snowy grass, rocks, and trees. God of War had a set linear story path, but you could break off to explore other areas of the map, but you would never find anything necessary for progression, only pieces of gear and abilities. Here, every bit of exploration is disconnected from story progression and only grants more treasure and maybe a weapon here and there. In God of War, the combat feels really good, but there's no reason for dynamic play. And in Village, the combat feels really good, but there's no reason to make smart gameplay decisions around your resources and inventory. Yes, in my opinion, the God of War effect is in full force here. Moving on, your weapons are taken from you in this spooky house, and you're gonna spend 40 minutes to an hour just walking around. So, in my opinion, all tension is gone because you know this game isn't gonna throw any threats at you that you gotta strategically avoid because you have no way to defend yourself. And, in my opinion, this game doesn't trust its players enough to challenge them while they're unarmed. You've got a, in my opinion, slow doll puzzle, which I can't say I liked very much, but I like the film puzzle in concept. I just wish it were more complex with multiple riddles in different parts of the house. A pretty, in my opinion, terrifying monster appears, a giant deformed baby crying and screaming. In my opinion, it's horrific imagery made even more effective by the limited lighting. In my opinion, it's great. Even knowing what to do here on repeat playthroughs, I still get chills because it's just so creepy. But, in my opinion, the experience is a bit shallow. All you do is run away, hide under a bed until it passes by, then run to the elevator and it's gone. Then we end up in a, in my opinion, shockingly bad boss fight. Actually, no. In my opinion, calling this a boss fight is to insult the entire history of video game boss fights. In my opinion, this could have been really interesting, fighting a possessed doll. In my opinion, lots of cool stuff could happen here. Instead, the entire thing is just running around in hide and seek, finding the doll and clicking the action button to watch a cutscene of Ethan stabbing her, and then she runs away and hides again, and you repeat that 2 more times and you win. I don't know what to say, but I tell you what, after the dragon fight and now this hide and seek nonsense, in my opinion, the Ancient Gods Part 2 Dark Lord boss fight sure is looking pretty good right about now. Nothing really changes in the next parts. You continue on the linear path for the rest of the game. You fight a giant fish monster, which, in my opinion, is a little better than the dragon fight, but not by much. He's really spongy. Even if you're using weapon swap strategies, he takes forever to die. Oh, but I forgot the strawberry puzzle. That's what I call puzzles from Alien Isolation that, in my opinion, are so brain dead that a baby could solve it by accident. You gotta turn on the power by playing Match the Color. Just look at the paper with the colors on it and make the squares the same color. There's no penalty for entering the wrong colors, there's no timer, and there's no limit to how many buttons you can press before it restarts. Nope, just make the left thing look like the right thing. You did it. After the fish fight, you work your way to the stronghold, where, surprisingly, in my opinion, things pick up a bit. And from this point on, in my opinion, Village actually gets kind of fun, in a dumb RE4, RE5 kind of way. They start throwing larger numbers of enemies at you in rooms where the exit is not clearly marked. In this section here, you have to make your way up to the left side and the right side to pull 2 levers which lower the main gate, which takes a little while to come down. The whole time you're defending yourself from a bunch of lichens. Yes, that's what I'm talking about. If you're gonna give me an inventory big enough to hold 7 weapons and all the ammo I want, put me in these situations where I need to fight for my life. The next section is, in my opinion, equally good. It's a multi-level room with narrow combat areas that box you in. You're using explosives to clear the way, enemies are surrounding you. In my opinion, it's great, in a Resident Evil 4 kind of way. In my opinion, the game has desperately needed this kind of action to distract from its lack of exploration and decision making. Next up is a boss fight with the Hammerman, and in my opinion, it's a pretty good one. He's a bit spongy like all the bosses, but in my opinion, it's a decent fight. He throws pillars at you, other enemies spawn in. I like it. In my opinion, it's fine for a Resident Evil boss. And then we are led to the final map of the game, the factory. Let me tell you something, I haven't watched any reviews of this game, but I've heard that a lot of people don't like the factory section, which blows my mind. In my opinion, the factory is the only map in the game that feels even remotely like a true Resident Evil map. In my opinion, it's the only time they successfully combine different Resident Evil designs into one for a fresh new experience. The factory is a multi-floor area with claustrophobic combat encounters, exploration that requires map checking, secret areas, problem solving, and a central puzzle that requires backtracking and locational awareness. In my opinion, this is the only good map in the game. Are people getting lost? Well, boo-hoo, God forbid you get lost and have to figure out a map in a Resident Evil game. Let's go through the factory and see exactly how it plays out. You're immediately blocked by 3 enemies with armored headgear, pushing you into combat. The second combat encounter blocks the stairway. There's an unpowered switch leading to an exit, noted. A third combat encounter coming through the doors, in a very, in my opinion, well-crafted room that blocks your route to avoid them. We establish our central puzzle element, a molder in the foundry which will require multiple pieces. A fourth combat encounter in a claustrophobic space encouraging combat. A second unpowered switch is found at another door. We have new enemies with weak points, like the headgear on the zombies that protects them from a headshot, and the new drill guys with a weak point on their chest that they cover up when they're coming after you. In my opinion, a good way to shake up the feel of combat. Another combat encounter blocking all routes with environmental hazards requiring timing and smart movement, making simple enemy evasion a little riskier. The hazards have targets that disable them and get more difficult to shoot as you progress, and if you focus too much on them, you can get surrounded. Hey, dynamic combat encounters, isn't that nice? We discover the backup generator, which we know will power at least 2 doors. In my opinion, the addition of explodable walls adds a nice change to the optional exploration, and electronically locked doors test your accuracy as you try to shoot them under the pressure of enemies around you. The map design is still entirely linear. Get the mold, take it to the foundry, go find the other mold, take it to the foundry, take the molded cogwheel to the generator, which is marked on the map as a point of interest, and has a glowing red light when you're in the room, so in my opinion, there's no reason to get lost looking for it. It's literally in the next room by the foundry. In my opinion, you can't miss it. Activating the power leads to an escape sequence that has heavy enemies in front of you that you can disable using strong shots to their weak points or by triggering traps. Then a bunch more enemies show up to block your path. This room is structured in a way to box you in with enemies if you go the wrong way, forcing combat. Exiting to the B3 level, you can call up the merchant on the lift, and you could take it back down to B4, but we just explored that entire area, so there's nowhere to go but up to B1. Enter the mines and find yourself in a room with enemies in the shadows that you'll likely end up killing because the exit isn't immediately obvious, and you need a little time to look around and find the crawl space. There's an, in my opinion, awesome section where you're ascending stairs as these flying drill guys are pursuing you, cutting you off, and when you get to the top you realize you can't proceed without disabling the fan at the top, and now you're stuck with these big pricks cornering you and damn it, I'm gonna die. So you try this section again, and this time you're identifying the spots to disable the fan before you ascend too far. Then you find the last mold, which makes a key for the door at the top of level B1. So what are we gonna do with it? Take the elevator down to B4 and go to the foundry. This is where I think players get lost. There's a drill guy blocking the most direct route to the foundry, so they run through this left door and now they don't know where they're going. Well, too bad, buddy. Either kill the guy and take the easy path, or look at the map and find your way around. Get to the foundry, make our mold, and now we have the key. We can go directly back up to B1, taking the elevator that's just a few rooms away, or if we remember that other key door, we can go grab all the goodies in there before we head up. We can also check out that second powered door that got activated by the generator. In my opinion, there's some good combat with heavies blocking your path, high pressure situations. Do you run away from a big guy at the risk of losing your place on the map, or do you take him out so you can continue on a more direct route? The decision is yours, and isn't it nice to be able to make decisions in a game like this? In my opinion, this is a decent section of the game. I'd even call it, in my opinion, fun. From the first Lycan Horde section with the gate all the way through the factory, I finally felt like I wasn't miserable all the time. And then it all ends in a, in my opinion, pretty good boss fight, where killing the boss requires smart movement, baiting him into chasing you in certain directions, drawing his aim to keep him from burning too much of the room and creating hazards for you, quickly aiming at his exposed weakness when he runs past you, and setting mines in his path if you feel like he's about to run you over.
In my opinion.
Good fight. But you know what
In my opinion.
isn't a good fight? Heisenberg. Why is this guy called Heisenberg?
In my opinion.
It's way too soon after Breaking Bad to be calling someone else Heisenberg. Give it another 15 years. Chris comes along and gives you this absurd tank which you drive around in while you shoot infinite bullets at Heisenberg's giant metal monster with red weak points. Just hold the trigger on him and move around a little. That's all there is.
In my opinion.
It's really bad.
In my opinion.
It's just a big set piece, not really a fight. And it ends with Mother Miranda killing Ethan, which I honestly thought might have been real.
In my opinion.
Ethan is an insufferable character.
In my opinion.
He was just bland and uninteresting in RE7, but I'll take that over this
In my opinion.
posturing, wisecracking douchebag in Village. They tried so hard to make him sympathetic but also cool.
In my opinion.
It's really cringy. I hate him. I really thought he was dead because the next part of the game has you playing as Chris. The game finally just gives up and says, you know what? Enough with all this. Just run around with big guns and kill everything. Who cares? And at this point, I agree. Who cares? I certainly don't. I was happy to see the game descend into utter schlock.
In my opinion.
It was fun. But no, Ethan is still alive, and it's time to take on the final boss, Mother Miranda. And I don't know how everyone else feels about this fight, but I think it's alright. She's just too spongy. Again, even with weapon swap combos, she takes forever to kill. But
In my opinion.
her behaviors are cool. She's like a God of War Valkyrie. You gotta sidestep her attacks, learn her movements.
In my opinion.
She's alright.
In my opinion.
It just goes on too long. And then the game is over. Ethan dies for real, Chris leaves with Mia and the baby grows up to be some secret powerful being under protective custody or whatever, and that's it. That's Resident Evil Village.
In my opinion.
It's like a roller coaster, or more like one of those automated cars that take you through a haunted house at an amusement park. I'm not straight up declaring that this isn't a Resident Evil game, but I wouldn't call it a Resident Evil game.
In my opinion.
I think Resident Evil needs to be more than just monsters and shotguns exploding heads and big creepy levels.
In my opinion.
It needs the foundations of its gameplay. Not everyone is going to agree, because not everyone plays games for the same reason. There are people who love Resident Evil for the spooky locations, the art style, the monsters, the weapons, the story. And I get it, that's fine.
In my opinion.
The linearity and the lack of inventory management really are the two big issues for me, because
In my opinion.
they cause so many other problems. RE4 was linear, but
In my opinion.
they made it work with constant engaging combat. And they didn't fucking lie to you with fake exploration just to present you with a bunch of locked doors to make you think there's lots of places to go. And a game being linear
In my opinion.
doesn't make it bad. I'm a big fan of the classic God of War games, and they are linear adventures. Super Mario Bros. Is a linear game, even with the warp tunnels.
In my opinion.
Those games are still great because their gameplay is designed to benefit their linearity, something that Village
In my opinion.
fails at. Is it unfair to compare Village to other Resident Evil titles? I don't think so. It's a Resident Evil game.
In my opinion.
When games in a franchise come out, there are things to be expected. If Mortal Kombat 12 comes out and there's no blood and the entire combat system is command grabs,
In my opinion.
you can't defend that by complaining that someone is unfairly comparing it to the other games in the series and not letting it stand alone as its own title. I had a little hope for the extreme difficulty, Village of Shadows, hoping it would be something like Madhouse in RE7 where they rearrange puzzle items and change your progression options, but unfortunately it just makes the combat harder, no structure changes. Capcom,
In my opinion.
you were doing good with RE7 and the RE2 remake, but
In my opinion.
this is 2 bad Resident Evil games now. Let's not make it 3. Though at this point, I would be surprised if the next one didn't continue down this path of dumbing down the gameplay in favor of linear, cinematic, quote-unquote immersion. I doubt I'll be returning to Village after this. It feels weird to say it, but I'd honestly rather play the RE3 remake again.
In my opinion,
That game pissed all over the legacy of RE3, but
in my opinion,
Village just guts the entire Resident Evil experience and leaves us with, I don't even know. What's with the title anyway? Resident Evil Village?
in my opinion,
It's like calling Resident Evil 2 Resident Evil City. Whatever, I'm just glad to be done with this one. Like, subscribe, Patreon, Twitch, leave a comment saying I just want this game to be Doom Eternal. Alright, that's it.
Abel, what's wrong? Are you okay?
I don't like Dr. Pepper.
I'm sorry.